Roger Staubach. Doesn't matter if it's Annika Sorenstam or Mia Hamm or Serena Williams. Doesn't matter what generation, what race, what sport. How often the number one answer that comes up when these amazing champions are asked that question, what allowed you to go from good to great and stay there, is that at some stage in their life they found a place where they learned to hate losing more than they loved winning. They expected to win. They expect to be successful. In fact, it was so much a part of what they expected that they didn't sometimes get the thrill out of it that some people do. Failure at anything left a mark. You know, if you take a look at that picture again, and I don't know how good the resolution is back there for you, but if you can ignore the goofy white guy on the right side, he had just scored on Michael Jordan. If you can get a glimpse of Jordan's face, you might have a sense of what Michael had to say to me in that moment and over the next 2 days. Michael had a lot to say. Unfortunately, not much of it I can repeat in this room. He was aggressive. He was occasionally foul. He kept coming back to this idea of a rematch. To which I said, dude, you had your shot. Michael, giving it to me, right? This event, as I said, is 4 days long, and he ends it. It's a charity event. He does it for the Make-A-Wish Foundation, and over the course of these 4 days, Michael Jordan raises $1.5 million from Make-A-Wish. It's pretty extraordinary. But at the end of it, he hosts a big reception, ballroom, chandeliers, all the players are there. You've got your spouse, your significant with you. All the coaches are there. Jordan's got his team around him. And if you're one of the players, your goal that night, the last night, is to make your way into Jordan's company to say thank you for the invitation, just the opportunity to be there. And then you hope you get invited back. My wife and I are there. We're making our way around the room, and we are having a great time. When we end up about 25 feet from Jordan, he sees me for the first time that night, and he starts. And Michael doesn't care that my wife is with me, right? It is not nice. We're making our way toward him. I'm thinking, why does Michael Jordan care, right? I mean, this is it's a charity event. Other than the thousands of people I'm going to tell, who are you going to know what happened, right? So we're making our way up there, and I want to ask him, but as we were, I realized I get to call him MJ from here on out. Because that's what you get to call him after you've used him like a dish rag. We get up there and I said, Michael, seriously, I got it. 2 days ago, it's funny. It's not just funny. Why do you care? I will promise you the next 30 minutes is among the greatest time I've ever spent inside the mind of a champion, inside the mind of a great winner, understanding how they think differently than most others. Wow. Michael Jordan said, you know what, I don't do anything in my life to finish second. He said, it doesn't matter if it's the seventh game of the NBA Finals or a moment with a scrub like you. He said, I do everything to finish first because I believe that if you ever get to the place in your lifetime where finishing second's okay, where you can excuse it, where where you can come up with a reason why that happened, you'll spend your lifetime there. He said, you're not going to be who I am. Where does that come from, Michael? Where does one of the most competitive minds on the planet, do you have any idea when that started? And Michael Jordan said, yes, I do. Love that, right? He says, yes, I do. And he starts telling us a story. It's a story I know a little bit about, but not as much as he ultimately shared. He's telling a story. He's a sophomore in high school in Wilmington, North Carolina, trying out for the varsity high school basketball team. That year, Michael Jordan stood 5'11". There happened to be another sophomore trying out for the team who was 6'7". At the end of tryouts, the coach decided to keep the 6'7" kid on the varsity. He had room for one sophomore, and he cut Michael Jordan, sent him home. Jordan's telling us a story. He says he goes home that night, he's crying because he was convinced he was really the better player. And his mother tried to console him. She wraps her arms around him and said, Michael, one day you'll get it. See, the other guy was 6'7". And Michael Jordan said this was his good to great moment. This is when the switch flipped for him, when he figured out what he was going to have to do to be a champion for the long haul. He said he looked his mother in the eye at 15 years old and said, Mom, we could spend the rest of our life coming up with an excuse for finishing second. He said, I don't want to be that. Jordan said the next morning he got up at 4 a.m. to start taking shots on the outside hoop at his house because he wanted one day to make that coach regret having made that decision.
Yeah.
And he's wrapping this up. He says, a couple of years ago, some of you might remember, they inducted Jordan in the Hall of Fame. When they did, moved the Hall of Fame ceremonies into a bigger venue because there were so many ticket requests, and they gave Jordan 300 seats. He says he had no problem giving away the first 299. But he held out one seat till he could track down the 6'7" kid that beat him out for the team as a sophomore. He wanted a kid in the audience while he was on the stage. And actually, from the stage, During his speech, Michael Jordan asked the cameras to find that young man because he wanted, from the stage, to say thank you. He looked at him and said, you know what? It would have been easy to come up with an excuse. You were 8 inches taller, but instead you became the first log on my fire. You taught me what it was going to take to be successful because I had to take no excuses. I had to take excuses off the table. Jordan's wrapping this discussion up with us, and he said, you know what? He said, a loss is not a failure until you make an excuse. You know, when I think about these lessons, when I think about the stories that really kind of come together for them, I really think there's 4 threads, 4 things that I think kind of tie these 16 characteristics together. And I hope if you didn't grab a bookmark, you'll grab one on your way out later today. First one is that these amazing champions will tell you that greatness is available to all of us. All of us have the opportunity to do something extraordinary if we're willing to do common things uncommonly well. That's what most people don't want to do, are the common things. Second, really fascinating discussion point when you're having this. Remember, these are culled from the greatest winners in the world of sports, and yet not a single one of their answers has anything to do with you touching your toes. This is about being more physically gifted than other people. It's about being more mentally, more emotionally, more spiritually disciplined than the people we're competing against, and we're all competing every day. Third, fascinating to me is that these amazing champions work on their characteristics, just these characteristics right here, as consistently as they work on the development of their skill set, their body. They are committed. They understand that if you want to win out there, you got to win in here first. And they are committed to that. And finally, actually really interesting to me, is almost throughout, you take all these interviews, all these conversations, and almost without question, every one of them will tell you that they have a morning ritual in which they govern, they give themselves, they manage nutrition. And by that, we're not talking about a breakfast buffet line. We're talking about they manage what they feed themselves. And by that, they're talking about what they read, what they listen to, who they talk to, what they watch. They give themselves something every day that gives them a special opportunity to be successful. You know, actually, there is a table out there. We got some books. We're gonna be signing a little later. But I noticed a number of you taking pictures of that screen and other things. I've actually got my notes from today's presentation and things. If you want to skip trying to take notes or craft any of this, you just want to send me a text message with your email address. I'll send you this my notes a little later today. In fact, that text number will actually rotate down and be down in that lower corner throughout the rest of the speech. Should be audio here.
UCLA's John Wooden in his final coaching game at UCLA. It's a team that responded magnificently and goes out a winner. The 10th NCAA title for UCLA.
It's so absolutely appropriate that we get to have this conversation today on the opening weekend of March Madness, because this guy is the king of March Madness. In an awful lot of places I speak these days where a lot of people don't know who he is, but I'm here to tell you he's the greatest coach there ever was. Over the last 12 years, John Wooden was the head basketball coach at UCLA. His teams won 10 national championships. 10 in the last 12 years. A record in the men's college game that will never be touched. John Wooden, unbelievable coach. Unfortunately,